Hi everyone, it's Nicole and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be demonstrating some fun ideas using brand new Waffle Flower March 2022 release products and demonstrating the brand new shader blending brushes. These are so amazing, you guys. If you have been wanting blending brushes that can really add detail when you're doing stenciling or inking of die cuts or any of those good things, these new blending brushes are amazing. There are 4 different styles. I'm going to be using the 0 and 1 stencils today. This is the 1. It's kind of more of a bullet type stencil and it is slightly angled. You're going to get much better results with these blending or shader, I should call them, brushes when you're doing more of a swipe motion. You'll notice as I am ink blending with this brand new Daisy stencil from Waffle Flower Crafts that I'm doing more of a swipe motion rather than the traditional motion that you may do with your other blending brushes. And what is so amazing is I'm adding a couple of colors to each flower of these stencils. First of all, I'm doing each flower in its own color, and you're going to see there's not really the overlap that you would get with traditional blending brushes. And second of all, I use the bigger size to add the base color, and then I'm using the smaller blending brush to add a second color to each petal of the flowers and another small blending brush, the 0 blending brush, to add the flower center. So you're basically able to just custom color your stencil. I love this. I have always loved being able to take a stencil and really add detail, but it's been so hard up until this point. So these new shader blending brushes are amazing. They do come in 4 sizes, as I mentioned, so you can buy sets of them, or you can buy a assortment pack that has all 4 sizes, so you can try them out. They are amazing. I love kind of having one for each color. I am storing them in one of the Simon Says Stamp storage little containers so that I can stand them all up, and I have them in rainbow order, which just makes it super easy to be able to grab the color I need. I'm using Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated inks for my inking today. We're doing kind of the peachy red color, an orange daisy, and a yellow daisy for this first background. And then the second background, I am going to switch to teal, pink, and purple. So I did 2 different backgrounds. These backgrounds could be used for all kinds of different cards. I am going to be using the Oversized Prayers sentiments for these today, and I have sped up the blending. It does take a little bit of time to blend this way. It's going to take more time than regular blending. Let's say if you're doing 1, 2, or even 3 colors over an entire stencil. Being very particular and coloring each individual flower in this way is going to take a bit of time. So in real time, each background took me about 17 to 20 minutes. I wanted to make sure and let you know that. However, it gives you super detailed results, as you will see when I pull the stencil up. So if you have been looking for a way to add lots of specific detail with blending brushes, these are absolutely amazing. And there are going to be, not every background will require an all over design. I really wanted to feature that for my video today, but let's say you want to add shading to a specific area of die cuts or things like that, which I will be showing in another video soon. You can definitely do that with these brushes as well. There have been times where I would like to add just tiny little bits of color to die cuts, and these are going to make that so much easier. As I progress through this entire panel, I started being able to do multiple flowers at one time. My whole goal was to just not to have 2 of the very same color next to each other here. And so that is what I am attempting. And also I got a little bit quicker the more I got into this. The size of these is amazing. I just can't say enough great things about these blending brushes. They are super great. Now, if you don't want to worry about your stencil moving at all while you are stenciling, you can see I'm holding mine in place. You could use some pixie spray on the back. The Waffle Flower stencil mats, I'm using the mini size today, also really kind of help hold the paper and the stencil in place. I'm not having to use a ton of pressure to hold this down. I just don't want it to shift as I'm blending. But if you want extra security, you can always tape it or use some pixie spray on your stencil and paper. We about have this entire background finished. I'm going to add color to the last few remaining flowers here. I will be trimming my background down, meaning I'm going to be left with about a 1 1/4 inch strip that I can use on other cards. Look at that background. Look at the detail. For me, it's very much like creating pattern paper, which is one of my very favorite things. I've always loved pattern paper, and I especially love creating my own with stamps, stencils, die cuts, all of that good stuff. It's one of my very favorite things about card making is creating everything from the ground up, basically from scratch. You're gonna see I'm gonna use my inks to customize some of the rest of the details for our card today. There is no colored cardstock used in the creation of these cards at all. That goes for our sentiment strips and our scallop borders to our die cut greeting. All of it is going to be inked. So now I'm using Tide Pool Tropic Bubblegum and Sweets, which is more of the purple tone, and then Carnation and Peony, which will be the pink. This color combination is maybe my favorite. I absolutely love it. I was kind of going for bright sunshiny citrus with the first one, and this second background just is like Easter. I don't know. I really loved creating these backgrounds. I could have done many color combinations. This was really fun and easy to create. So again, we're just going to ink all of these. And even though I sped it up, I really just wanted to keep it in the video so you can see the creation of the flowers and see how they kind of come to life, as well as how easy it is to blend with these blending brushes. So these are the two more bullet tip. There's also some more like angled, thin, skinny ones, which will give you completely different results. Let's say you're trying to stencil kind of more of a stripe type of thing or a line. Just so amazing. I'm really excited to show all of these in future videos because I can see myself reaching for these over and over. I'm really loving those little purple daisies. For the center of these, I did ink them all, I believe, with Sweets ink. But keep in mind for both cards, even though I inked the flower centers, I'm going to be adding pearls to the flower centers, so I probably could have just skipped that. I wasn't sure until I had already done my backgrounds and was in the finishing phase. Those kind of thing, pearls and sequins and confetti and all of that are a finishing touch, and I'm not always sure I want to use them until we get to that point of the card creation process. Just like before, I'm trying not to have two of the same color flower right next to each other. I know the pink and purple are pretty similar. As the ink dries and is absorbed into the cardstock a bit, the inking tends to smooth and blend out a bit, and I think that the difference in color is a little more evident. So pretty. And I'm trying to do multiple flowers at once, just like I did with the first background. So as soon as I get about one of each color, then I can really start adding more at a time throughout my panel. So you can see I'm just kind of trying to guess where I want all of my pink flowers to go here. And then we'll take Peony with our smaller brush and just pull that color out from the center. So I'm doing more of a swipe motion rather than a circular, I'm not doing a circular motion. And that goes for the bigger brush with the petal to the small brush. So I'm kind of swiping out from the center. Now I'm going to take bubble gum. And I think this is going to be used for most of the rest. I think I have one more teal flower to add. And then we're going to take Sweets with the smaller size brush, the number 1, and, or yes, the number 0, I'm so sorry, and pull that out from the center. Then we're going to go back with Tide Pool and Tropic and fill in that last little flower. Now I am going to go with my Sweets color, and we're going to add, did I use Sweets? I maybe used Rose. I think I maybe used Sweets and Rose. And we're just going to add color to the centers. And look at that beautiful background, you guys. Oh, I love it so much. Okay, I know I mentioned I didn't use any colored cardstock at all. So to make completely coordinating embellishments for my card, I'm just taking some scraps of cardstock and I'm taking Tropic ink right here and swiping it on a scrap of cardstock that I can then die cut with a Scallop Stitches Simon Says stamp border to create the scallop borders for my panel. Now I want my panels to match for the second card as well, so we'll take some Cantaloupe ink and do the same thing here. This will dry nice and smooth, and I'll be able to die cut this and use it for the borders, as well as to stamp and emboss these smaller sentiment strips. I'm going to get 2 borders and a sentiment strip from each of these small little areas. I've die cut the Oversized Prayers stamp set. I die cut the detailed prayers and the outline from smooth white cardstock. I am going to take some bubble gum and Sweets, I believe. Actually, I think I maybe used Carnation and Peony. Can't remember. Nope, I used bubble gum and Sweets. And I am taking the larger size blending brush and I'm doing more of a swipe motion. So in the past, I have ink blended scripty die cut greetings like this, and sometimes it can be a little difficult just because it's so delicate. A small blending brush, you can see, works amazing. Plus we're getting a fantastic ombre result on this. And I love how this looks. So there's one of the prayers, and I die cut prayers multiple times so I can stack them one on top of another before adding them to the shadow on my card. I did go back with bubble gum and kind of just blend down into the Sweets color a little bit more. And then we're going to use Cheeky and Blush for the second prayers. I'm going to clean up that ink off my stencil mat just with a microfiber cloth. And then we're going to ink up the second greeting. Again, I'm going to take the larger bullet-shaped blending brush, and I'm kind of swiping from the top down with the lighter color. And then we will go in with blush and add more. So if you wanted to do multiple colors to have even more of an ombre effect, or maybe different colors, you could very easily do that with a detail blending brush because it doesn't have as much surface area, allowing you to really get any little bit or area with the color you're looking for. Once I have this done, we are going to stack these one on top of another with a little liquid glue. I like to place an acrylic block on top to help hold them down and hold them flat. I did clean off the excess ink on my blending brushes on a microfiber cloth before placing them back in the storage unit. So here is that Scallop Stitches die from Simon Says Stamp. It is one of my all-time favorites that I have used over and over again. And we're simply die cutting 2 borders from that piece. And then from the leftover, we are going to be stamping a sentiment strip. So I'm making sure that I'm just getting a nice little thin border or 2 thin borders and leaving enough room to stamp and emboss a sentiment to create our sentiment strip. This is going to ensure that everything on our card matches perfectly. Let's move our die cut machine out of the way real quick. And let's trim down our backgrounds. So I'm going to trim the background down to 3 inches wide by 5.5 inches long, or I guess 3 inches tall, pardon me, by 5.5 inches wide for landscape style cards. And again, you can keep those leftover little skinny pieces for extra cards. I'm going to put some adhesive on the back of my stenciled panel and pick up the die cut borders that we just created with the ink and the Scallop Stitches die, trim them down if need be. I think this piece was a little bit wider than the second one. And then we want to go ahead and take our white die cuts. We're going to poke everything out with the Spellbinders Tool-in-One if the insides of the letters didn't come all the way out. And then we're going to add a little liquid glue and place these one on top of another. This gives a little bit more of a substantial look to our die cut greeting. I personally like to have a backer for this, so I'm glad that there is a shadow for the greeting, as against a busy stenciled or pattern paper or stamped background, it helps it show up a little bit better. So I did 3 layers for the detailed prayers, and then we're going to glue the whole thing down to the shadow and then glue the shadow to our background. And that is going to be so pretty. It's very legible with that white backer. And I'll put the acrylic blocks on top to help hold that down and flat while I work on the second background. So we're going to glue down these scallop borders to our citrus, I'm going to call it our citrusy background. And I accidentally don't think I got the adhesive where I needed to. Let's try that again. There we go. And we're going to do the exact same thing for the second background. Now I'm going to take glossy accents and trace around the word prayers. This is going to give that word a glossy raised finish, which really helps it stand out a little bit more on the card. And then I'm going to let that sit and completely dry before we put together the rest of our card. So I'm just tracing around the word with the glossy accents here. This is one of my favorite ways to instantly add a pop to a die cut greeting. Let's go ahead and do that for our second background. And then we are going to adhere each of these panels to a white side fold card base right in the middle, making it the center or star of the show on each of these cards. These kind of cards are not my favorite to make. I don't think they're anybody's favorite to make. And so I always love having sympathy, thinking of you, get well soon type of cards on hand for when I need them, so I'm not having to make them when, you know, your emotions are right on the surface. It's so much easier to be able to grab that card and pop it in the mail and not have to be thinking about why you're having to send it. So I love this stamp set. It comes with all kinds of different greetings in this Oversized Prayers stamp set. So I turned one more into a sympathy card and one a get well soon card. But you could make these any kinds of cards. You could use any kind of greeting on here. These can be birthday cards, anniversary cards, thank you cards, hello cards, friend cards. It does not matter. I love a good card that could be used for anything. So simply swap out that greeting for something else and you have a totally different occasion card. So I'm going to take the the stamps from the Oversized Prayers set, and we're going to put together Keeping You in Our and Thoughts and on our teal background. And we're going to stamp this with clear embossing ink and heat emboss with white embossing powder. I am using my MISTI so that I can ensure that I get a very good stamped greeting. And then I will sprinkle on white embossing powder and heat set that. Do keep in mind, because this is not solid cardstock, this is cardstock we created with ink, you either want to let that inked panel dry, and with swiping your ink on there, it does tend to give a little bit heavier application, so it does need a bit to dry, or hit it with a heat tool until you ensure that it is completely dry before trying to stamp and emboss. You don't want your embossing powder sticking to that entire panel because the ink isn't dry. So I kind of did a whole lot of other things before coming back and doing my stamping and embossing to ensure that my ink was all the way dry. For the second card, we're going to use the phrase "for a speedy recovery," and we will simply stamp that on our orange strip. Again, sprinkle on our white embossing powder, and then heat set this with our heat tool to finish embossing before die cutting with the Simon Says Stamp Sentiment Labels dies. The Sentiment Labels dies are some of my very favorite. We're going to take the smallest size from that collection and die cut these into strips. You could also use a paper trimmer to die cut these easily into thin strips for your card. I'm going to tape them in place with a little repositionable adhesive and run them through my die cutting machine, and then add some foam on the back of each strip before adding it to my cards. For the teal and purple background, we're going to add that up above the word prayers. For the second card, it needs to go down below, and it's going to slightly overlap the loop and prayers. And remember that we have popped this up with several layers of cardstock. So I'm going to divide my foam adhesive on the back of this strip so that it kind of straddles the loop in the Y on prayers. And that's going to ensure that it lays nicely against my card, just like that. Try to get it lined up and get it straight. And there it fits perfectly. Now comes the finishing details that we were talking about a little bit earlier when we were stenciling. I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Triangles trays to hold these pretty pink posh pearls in place. It is the perfect little way to pick up your accents or hold your accents while you are picking them up with an embellishment wand and popping them in place. The best thing about these is that you can easily funnel them either back into the bag or the storage container when you're done. I absolutely love these little triangle trays, and they've become one of my go-to products whenever I'm designing. When I have all the pearls in the centers of my daisies, I did decide my card needed some hearts. We're going to place a couple of hearts at each end of the sentiment strip to finish the design. On the citrus background, I used red hearts, and on the purpley pink, the Easter background I'm calling it, I am going to use some pink hearts. And you can see how great these little trays are. I funneled all the yellow right back in to the yellow container, and now I'm using these bright pink. I'm adding a little dab of glue, picking up the pearls with my embellishment wand and popping them in place. So quick and easy. I think it's a really nice, subtle way to dress up the background even more, since the background really is kind of the star of the show here. The oversized prayers takes up lots and lots of room, and our card doesn't need a whole lot else. So I'm going to grab these little pink hearts, we'll glue those in place, and our cards are all finished. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this shader detail brush video tutorial featuring brand new Waffle Flower March 2022 release products. The supplies I used to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my Patreon members. If you would like to become a member of Patreon, please click the link in the description down below. I would love to have you over there. We are a super fun community and I look forward to seeing you there if you decide to join us. Here is another video featuring waffle flour products that you might be interested in. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, click that like button, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to always be notified when I have a new card making video. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.